Hello. Thank you all for joining. My name is Angela Hawkins. I am the Public Affairs Officer for the Green River District. Thank you for taking your time to join us and welcome to the Dingell Act scoping meeting concerning Price, Moab, and Vernal Resource Management Plan amendments. This afternoon, we have a great panel of experts that are going to give information on the resource management plan. First, I would like to introduce the Green River District Manager, Lance Porter.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Angela. Thank you for welcoming us. As Angela mentioned, my name is Lance Porter. I am the District Manager for the Green River District. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon for BLM's public scoping meeting. So a little bit of background on tonight's meeting. In March 2019, the John D. Dingell Junior Conservation Management and Recreation Act was signed into law. This scoping meeting is necessary for the BLM to complete 6 land use plan amendments and bring them into conformance with the Dingell Act. These targeted land use plan amendments are located in the Vernal, Moab, and Price BLM Utah field offices. We have outlined tonight's meeting to be able to receive feedback from you in various formats over this Zoom meeting. After we give a brief overview of a plan amendment, we will then give you the opportunity to use your raise a hand feature in the Zoom platform. We will then unmute your mic and you'll be able to provide us your thoughts and insights that can assist us in this plan amendment. And then we'll go to the next plan amendment. So it's a little bit different than previous scoping meetings. Sometimes other scoping meetings, we've just focused on one planning effort. The Dingell Act, where it designated these new land designations and outlined 6 different plan amendments. We've tried to format this meeting to help us be more successful, a little more succinct with the audience, and to cause a little bit less confusion rather than having 6 different meetings. We're hoping to save members of the public and each of you viewing tonight a little bit of time, as well as our agency. So you'll be given that opportunity not only tonight to submit your feedback, identify the issues for these plan amendments, but you'll also be given the opportunity to submit written comments to us. With your input, I know that we can have a productive meeting this evening, and I'm looking forward to hearing your feedback and having a great meeting. BLM staff and I appreciate our community members and interested public, and we want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us for this meeting that we know will guide future management of our public land resources. I look forward to your insights and input as you provide scoping comments for these land use plan amendments. Angela Hawkins will now take care of some housekeeping items and we'll begin the portion of our meeting.
Thank you, Lance. Our meeting is very full and we'll be going through a lot of information. On our agenda for the meeting, the Dingell Act overview, planning versus implementation, public scoping and how to share relevant input, presentation for each land use plan amendment, next steps and timing, and opportunities for public input will be provided through today's presentation. Although we will be going over the information quickly, we will show you where you can find more information concerning each of the plans. As a reminder, we are here to discuss the changes the Dingell Act mandates. We value your input and we will be giving you time to comment. Please keep your input respectful and on point. Use the Q&A portal to ask questions and comments that contribute. To give everyone the opportunity to provide input, please limit your comments to 2 minutes. Attendees joining by computer can select raise hand at the bottom of their screen or submit their comment through the comment portal. Attendees joining by phone can press *9 to raise their hand and *6 to unmute their microphone. I will now hand the time over to Stephanie Howard.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Howard, and I'm Branch Chief over NEPA and GIS for the Green River District. The Dingell Act of March 2019 created several special designations across the Price, Vernal, and Moab field offices. These include the Jurassic National Monument, the John Wesley Powell National Conservation Area, the McCoy Flats non-motorized trail system, the 3 new segments in the Wild and Scenic River system along the Green River, the San Rafael Swell Recreation Area, and 17 wilderness areas. In addition, it released 17,420 acres of wilderness study area from further wilderness study. Also, the Dingell Act specified in some of these cases how we should manage these areas, what we should manage them for. And in some cases, it only identified resources that we should emphasize as we develop management for those areas. The Price, Vernal, and Moab resource management plans, which describe how the BLM will manage public lands within their field office boundaries, were prepared in 2008, so they do not address any of these new designations. We are here today to begin the process to amend these 3 plans to, number 1, identify management for the new designations where it wasn't specified, if it's not specified by the Dingell Act, and 2, to remove any decisions from the RMPs that conflict with the purposes of the designations that were specified by the Dingell Act. Next, Amber Koski, the Green River District Dingell Act Coordinator, will describe to you the difference between a resource management plan, which is a very specialized type of BLM prepared document, and an implementation level plan, which is a very common type of BLM prepared document and what most people are accustomed to seeing on the BLM's ePlanning NEPA register. Amber?
Thank you, Stephanie. Hi, my name is Amber Koski, and I'm a planning environmental coordinator here for the Green River District and one of the project managers for Dingell Act implementation. So resource management planning decisions are made on a broad scale and guide subsequent site-specific implementation decisions. The RMP, or Resource Management Plan, establishes management direction or sets the rules for public land use. RMP decisions for public lands fall into the following categories: goals, objectives, allowable uses, and allowable actions. Goals are broad statements of desired outcomes. A sample goal for land health standard might be something like maintain healthy, productive plant and animal communities. Objectives, on the other hand, identify specific desired outcomes. Objectives are usually quantifiable and measurable and may have established timeframes for achievement. A sample objective might be manage vegetative communities on the upland portion of the XYZ watershed to achieve by 2025 an average 30 to 40% canopy cover. Moreover, allowable uses are allowances, limitations, or prohibitions defined by area, activity, or resource. A sample allowable use is, in XYZ watershed, OHVs are limited to designated trails, where management actions are decisions that aim to maintain, restore, or improve desired conditions. A sample management action is develop a watershed restoration plan for XYZ watershed. In contrast, implementation plans are site-specific decisions that result in on-the-ground projects. These are typically go, no-go type decisions, such as where to build a campground or install a trailhead. Implementation plans must conform to the resource management plan's decisions. If an implementation plan does not conform to the RMP decisions, then it cannot be approved unless that resource management plan is amended. The BLM is not intending to make implementation level decisions in these plan amendments. If implementation level comments are received during this comment period, the BLM will not address them in the amendment, but may address them later in an implementation level document. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, would you actually go back, Angela? Thank you. Goals. Scoping is a requirement of both the National Environmental Policy Act and BLM planning regulations. Scoping is a collaborative public involvement process used to identify resource issues to be addressed during the planning process. To be most helpful, scoping comments should provide new information, such as resource issues to be considered, data or studies to be used, possible alternatives, and applicable consultation or coordination needs. Resource issues are disputes or controversies about potential land management due to new information. In this case, the Dingell Act designations. For example, the wilderness areas by policy must be managed as Visual Resource Management Class 1, the most restrictive VRM class, which requires preservation of the viewshed. So VRM is not a planning issue for the 17 wilderness areas. However, there is no policy requiring a specific VRM class in a designated trail system or designated recreation area. So determining the appropriate VRM class will likely be a resource issue for McCoy Flats or for the San Rafael Swell amendments. Scoping also involves the introduction of preliminary planning criteria to the public for comment. Next slide, please. Planning criteria guide development of the plan by helping define the decision space or the sideboards that define the scope of the planning effort. Planning criteria are generally based upon applicable law, director and state director guidance, and the results of public and governmental participation. Examples of planning criteria are listed on this slide. They include, are not limited to the following. The plan will be completed in compliance with FLPMA, NEPA, and all other relevant federal law, executive orders, and management policies of the BLM. Where existing planning decisions are still valid, those decisions may remain unchanged and be incorporated into the new RMP or Resource Management Plan. The plan will recognize valid existing rights, and Native American tribal consultations will be conducted in accordance with policy, and tribal concern will be given due consideration. The planning process will include consideration of any impact on Indian trust assets. Next slide, please. I'm now going to walk you through our ePlanning web links, and they will be posted in this chat for your convenience. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. This is our BLM National NEPA Register web portal page. The simplest thing you can do is in your Google search is input eplanning.gov. It will come up, and which time you can enter in the search criteria, Public Law 116-9. I usually just type in Dingell Act. Next slide, please. So on the Dingell Act project portal page, you will find short links to each of our land use plan amendments. You will also find the notice of intent and additional scoping document information, maps with some GIS shapefiles being added. I'm now going to turn the time over to, I apologize, to Roger Banker, the Vernal Field Office Manager. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you. There we go. Good afternoon. My name is Roger Baker, and I'm the field manager of Vernal Field Office. I'd like to echo what Lance said about this afternoon's meeting, and thank you for your participation. Vernal Field Office has two parcels in the Dingell Act that we're going to cover today. One is the John Wesley Powell National Conservation Area, and the other is the McCoy Flats bicycle area. I'm going to turn this now over to our assistant field manager, Renee Ars, to give a little brief overview. Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Roger. Like Roger mentioned, my name is Renee Arce. I'm the Assistant Field Manager over Resources for the Vernal Field Office, and I'm happy to be here. I'm looking forward to presenting two unique areas that were designated by the John D. Dingell Act within the Vernal Field Office, as mentioned earlier. The first is the John Wesley Powell National Conservation Area, or NCA for short. As you can see on the map, the John Wesley Powell NCA is an area located approximately 20 air miles northeast of Vernal, Utah, and consists of an area just under 30,000 acres. The John Wesley Powell NCA was named after the famous explorer whose expedition brought him through the area in the mid to late 1800s. The John Wesley Powell NCA is a primitive area, meaning that to this day, there hasn't been much development made to the land. There are a few roads within the NCA, adding to the overall remoteness and ruggedness of the area, offering visitors spectacular vistas and primitive recreation opportunities throughout. Some of the current uses within the NCA include things such as livestock grazing, wildlife habitat improvement projects, and hunting. If you are interested in this newly designated NCA, I encourage you to consider submitting a formal comment. Thank you, and back to you, Angela.
Thank you, Renee. We will now open the time for participants' input on the John Wesley Powell National Conservation Area. Comments will be most helpful if you can state specifically what you like or don't like and what improvements you think can be made. To have the opportunity to talk, you may raise your virtual hand either at the bottom of your screen or by pushing *9 on your phone, *6 to unmute. Right, we have several hands going up. Mike Hyde, we're going to go to you first. I've asked you to unmute. If you can just unmute and then go ahead and speak.
Hello, this is Mike Hyde. I'm representing the Utah Public Lands Policy Coordinating Office today. And just wanted everyone to realize that this NCA is within Uinta County, and Uinta County has adopted a county resource management plan. And that plan contains an entire chapter regarding how the county views this NCA and how the management should be done in a way that protects the resources, but also preserves the right of grazers and hunters and recreationists to use the area. So I would just like to encourage the BLM to get familiar with the county plan, especially the chapter on this NCA. And as you go through the planning process, try to remain as consistent as possible with that county plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. We'll now go to Michael. Michael, if you'll go ahead and unmute, that would be fantastic.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. It's Michael Cook with Uinta County. I think our major concern are the roads within this John Wesley Powell area. We want to make sure that they remain open. We do have several county roads within that area. Some of them have been cherry stemmed out, but others haven't. And I think that we would, our stance is that we do want, these have been traditional roads in that area that have been used by hunting and hunters, cattlemen, and just public in general, and that we would like these roads to remain open in this area.
Thank you, Michael. We appreciate your comment. We will now move to Tom Elder. If you'll go ahead and unmute yourself, that would be fantastic.
Yes, I am concerned with the paleontological resources. There have been significant specimens pulled out of especially the western part of the John Wesley Powell area. And there's a significant exposure of the Morrison Formation that's provided a lot of very good specimens. I haven't seen anything so far in this process that you're involved in that addresses the paleo resources, although I think at one point I said something like paleo resources will be addressed in the future. I think that one of the concerns is when you're talking about travel management, the concern is making areas with fragile and not easily protected resources that are just out there on the ground too accessible, because it leads to sometimes looting of fossil resources off of federal land. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Mike and Michael. We appreciate your comments. We will be moving on to our next with Renee Arce again and the McCoy Flats Trail System overview. Renee?
Hi again. The second area that I would like to present today is the McCoy Flats Mountain Bike Trail System. The McCoy Flats Mountain Bike Trail System is located southwest of Vernal, Utah, within what we would consider the urban interface, meaning that it's close to town, as you can see on the map. Due to its close proximity to Vernal, the McCoy Flats area, including the mountain bike trail system, has become a popular recreation area for both the local community as well as visitors that come to recreate on the existing designated mountain bike trails within the area. The McCoy Flats Mountain Bike Trail System is the first congressionally designated mountain bike trail system in the nation. Because of this unique designation, the BLM is working to develop a management plan for the McCoy Flats Mountain Bike Trail System that is meaningful and sustainable for future generations. If you are interested in the McCoy Flats Mountain Bike Trail System, I encourage you to consider submitting a formal comment today or anytime during the open comment period. Thank you, and back to you, Angela.
Thank you, Renee. We'll open up just a small window of time for participants' input concerning the McCoy Flats Trail System. Thank you for keeping your comments specific. You may raise your virtual hand at the bottom of your screen or by pushing *9 on your phone, *6 to unmute. Michael Cook.
There we go.
There you go. Thank you.
Sorry, started to talk before I unmuted. This is an area that have a probably a fairly major concern with. I just emailed Renee a map of the boundary of the area that was discussed while they were writing the bill, and it is considerably smaller than the one that's showing on your map. And we're pretty concerned about that area growing to an extent that wasn't intended. So that's something that caught us way by surprise. The area that was discussed on the map stays east of Highway 40 and is probably about half the size of the area that's showing on the maps that we're looking at today. And we would like that cut back to the original area. That's about it, I guess. And also that the roads, county roads in that area remain open too. So.
Thank you, Michael. We'll go to Mike Hyde and then to Tyson.
Hello, Mike Hyde again, representing Utah PLIPCO. I echo the concerns of Uinta County. It does appear that the McCoy Flats planning area boundary has grown a little bit larger than was anticipated. If you look at the map, the trail system is all on the east side of Highway 40, but the planning area extends over on the west side of Highway 40. So I would encourage the BLM to work with Uinta County to maybe reduce that study area down to the actual area where the trail system is. On a more positive note, this is exciting that this is the first congressionally designated mountain biking trail area. It is very important to the economy out in the Vernal area. There's lots of people that come from around the country to use this facility, and a lot of use by high school mountain biking teams when they have events there and practices. And it's a really good addition to the recreational facilities out here in the Uinta Basin, helpful for hotel and motel restaurant industry in Vernal. So appreciate BLM's efforts here to provide some nationwide recognition to these trails. I know there's some improvements going to be done out there on roads and restrooms and that kind of thing. So it's heading in the right direction. Clipco would again recommend the BLM closely coordinate with Uinta County on this and address their concerns and not close any roads in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We'll go to Tyson and then to Tilden. Go ahead.
Tyson Todd. I'm with the Trust Lands Administration for the state of Utah. If you look at the map, you know, the BLM lands are in tan, so to speak, and trust lands are in blue, and there's a large portion of trust lands in this boundary. And I understand in a previous conversation with Roger that the boundaries were made mostly just for ease of defining a boundary using roads and whatnot, rather than just section lines. But you know, trust lands through the Dingell Act is trading out of entire parcels or sections or entire sections or parcels of land in 5 different sections in this area. And part of the reason for that was to put these trails into BLM land and off of trust lands. I guess just a cause for concern, or kind of from trust lands perspective, is, you know, we traded out of these lands once, and we would like to ensure that the trails that are made under BLM direction stay on BLM land. And if there's anything outside of that, that perhaps inches towards trust lands, that we be notified early and often, and to ensure that no trespass occurs. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyson. Tilden, if you would like to go ahead and talk. You might still be on mute.
Okay, thanks. It wasn't popping up, giving me an option to unmute. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thanks. Yeah, my name's Tilden Jones. I'm with the Northeastern Utah Mountain Bikers. I'm the president of the board for that group. We are a chapter of IMBA, the International Mountain Biking Association. We will be submitting a lot of formal comments in writing through the ePlanning system, but I think the general comment that we would have is, as the local mountain biking organization and advocacy group and representative of IMBA in the Vernal area, we hope that the BLM will work very closely with us in making sure that the intended outcome of managing this trail system for mountain biking as it was designated by Congress. We really hope to work closely with the BLM and have a lot of input with you, and happy to provide that input and make sure that the management plans are reflecting that intended outcome. So as I said, we'll be submitting comments through the online portal before the deadline. Thank you.
Thank you, Tilden. And just as a reminder, that deadline is December 3rd. We will now move over to Dana Truman in the Price Field office.
Hi, my name is Dana Truman, and I am the Assistant Field Manager for Resources within the Price Field office. In this section, we'll be talking about Jurassic National Monument. The map on your left shows that the Jurassic National Monument was designated in the northern part of the Swell, just about 45 minutes south of Price. Within the monument, the Dingell Act designated 850-acre Jurassic National Monument to protect paleontological, scientific, educational, and recreational resources. And it includes the Cleveland Lloyd Dinosaur Quarry, which many of you may be more familiar with. With the designation of the monument, many of the activities will continue as they have in the past. For example, livestock grazing will continue. However, within the monument, there are a few things that will change. Our infrastructure development will be limited, motorized vehicles will be limited to designated routes, and the development of minerals will not occur. The Dingell Act also directed the BLM to continue their research and education efforts within the monument, and BLM will be providing information about the paleontological resources. We may develop agreements with organizations to help support our shared resources and values. With the designation of the monument, we do expect that visitation will increase. We are looking for your input on what objectives, goals, and management do we need to consider to meet the purposes of the Dingell Act. In addition, we're interested in your input about overlapping designations. The map in the center of your screen shows our current overlapping designations. The gray polygon is our Jurassic National Monument. Surrounding it, our current RMP has a Cleveland Lloyd Dinosaur Quarry Special Recreation Management Area. And the brown polygon is the current Cleveland Lloyd Dinosaur Quarry Area of Environmental Concern. We are excited to hear your input, and I'd like to turn your time back over to Angela.
Thank you, Dana. Thank you for keeping your comments focused. For those who would like to comment on Jurassic National Monument, you may raise your virtual hand either at the bottom of your screen or by pushing *9 on your phone, *6 to unmute. Thank you, Tom. Go ahead.
I would just say that in reference to the overlapping ACEC and SRMA designations, I would wish for the most expansive designation to carry the day, because the public, when you hang the term national monument on a place, there's going to be more visitation there than there has been in the past. And it's a pretty area too. So I think it should be treated with great care that you preserve the values. And some of those values are going to be like what you can see from the quarry area. So at any rate, I don't think that the focus should solely be on the treasure trove of fossils they're digging out of there. It should be on the surrounding area too, in anticipation of a surge public interest. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Tom. Okay. Thank you again for your comments. We will be now moving to Chris Conrad from the Pricefield office to talk about the Green River Wild, Scenic, and Recreational River segments overview.
Thank you, Angela. Good afternoon. I'm Chris Conrad, the Pricefield office manager. And this time I'm going to be helping with an overview with the wild and scenic river aspects of what was done in the Dingell Act. First off, if you look at your maps, the one on the left, it's basically Emery County to the east on the left. You have the Green River running north and south. And then over on the right side of the map, we have Grand County. And so this is something that we share with the other BLM office, the Moab office. Over on the right side gives you a little bit more information and a close-up. The Act provided about 63 river miles of new designations from the top down. You'll see that there's about 5.3 miles of wild designated, and that's shown in blue. There's 8.5 miles of recreation shown in green. And then down at the bottom along Labyrinth, we have 49.2 miles designated scenic. The valid existing rights will be honored for all. There are some differences, however. In the wild segment, new development will be prohibited. And we're going to show what we're talking about here on the next slide when we look at the river corridor. The scenic segment, it's limited, and it is allowed in the recreational segment, which is green. And it will be allowed as long as the outstanding and remarkable values known as ORVs are preserved. Next slide. On this slide, you get to see the wild recreation and the scenic segments. You'll also notice a hatched area along each one showing the river corridor that's protected or will be protected. Basically, or at least in general, there's about a 1/4 mile from the center line on each side that will have this designation. But more importantly, probably is the 320 acres that will be protected for each river mile. And that can be altered a little bit. And that's where we're going to be asking you for your comments. So if you zoom in closely, you'll be able to see how the hatched areas actually go outside that purple line. And what we've tried to do is to maximize the protection of the ORVs that are associated with the river and the river corridor. And that's all I have for Wild and Scenic River. Back to you, Angela.
Thank you, Chris. We'd like to ask for participants' input on the Green River Wild Scenic River segments. You may raise your virtual hand either at the bottom of your screen or by pushing *9 on your phone, and again *6 to unmute. Sarah, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Sarah Stock, and I am a Grand County Commissioner, and I also represent the viewpoint of the Grand County Commission. We had a public meeting last night where we discussed some of these comments. So, as you can see from those maps, this segment of Labyrinth Canyon, the Scenic River segment, runs through Grand County. And we think that we support protection of this area. It's very important, especially for quiet recreation uses like canoes and non-motorized boats. One thing that this Dingell Act Resource Management Plan alterations overlaps a little bit with the BLM Travel Management Plan that the Moab Field Office is working on. And one thing that we are adamant about as far as the County Commission is that we think that the Hey Joe route along the river corridor, which is a dirt road, should be closed to motorized vehicles. It really disrupts the wild and peaceful river setting. And we're also supportive of closures in the riparian areas that feed the Green River. So 10 Mile, Hell Roaring, Hey Joe. And yeah, so that's very important. We also really encourage the BLM to look at bighorn sheep habitat and protect zones that are important for lambing, and especially those riparian areas. And I know y'all realize the special value that they have, but there's very little water in the desert, and many of those streams that feed into the Green River in that section do have a road running right down the main channel of the riparian area. And so yeah, we support, the County Commission supports the closure of those routes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. We'll move over to Tom.
Yes, I've floated these sections of river repeatedly, and they're really fabulous. And there's a recreational industry that's built around them too. And it's an industry, the river running industry deals with an extremely limited resource. So I, as someone who likes to float that area, I echo what Ms. Stock said about how important the silence of the area is to people who are floating down those canyons. It really is disruptive of everybody within earshot if there's a lot of noisy traffic on the rim. So I understand that this is going to be a complex and thorny issue for the BLM, but if it devolves into a setting where you cannot easily escape noise floating those rivers, it's going to severely impact that experience. So I guess that's it.
Thank you, Tom. We will now head back to Chris to talk about Desolation, Turtle, and Labyrinth wilderness areas.
Okay, so I'm going to highlight three topics. The first one is the wilderness areas themselves. We took the wilderness study areas, when I say we, it was Congress, and converted most of it into wilderness areas. In the map in the center of the slide, the one at the top, we actually have two wilderness areas. One is Desolation and the other one is Turtle. And then down at the bottom, just below it, you see Labyrinth. You'll be able to comment somewhat on how those boundaries have been identified on the map. Next slide. So on this slide, we have two things I want to identify. One is the areas that the wilderness study areas used to cover, which cover no longer. There's about 17,420 acres of wilderness study area that did not make it into wilderness areas. And we're going to be asking for help on how to manage that kind of designations to place in our RMP. If you look at the blue area or the blue arrow, it shows you the area, one of the larger areas around Williams, Lila Canyon and Williams Draw. That area was pulled out from the wilderness study area and is no longer wilderness. And so you'll have an opportunity to comment there. Down at the bottom of the map, just above the city of Green River, there was another fairly large chunk that was pulled out that is no longer going to be wilderness study area, and it's not a wilderness area. And you'll have opportunities to comment on those. Third, I want to highlight the blue line that's shown in and around Range Creek. We have special recreation areas, both in the Swell and here in these wilderness areas that we want to either keep the same, modify, or eliminate completely, and we'll be asking for your comments regarding those. And that's all I have, Angela. Back to you.
Thanks again, Chris. We would like to open a small amount of time to the participants to comment on Desolation, Turtle, and Labyrinth wilderness areas. Again, you may raise your virtual hand either at the bottom of the screen or by pushing *9 on your phone and *6 to unmute. We will go to Tom Elder first and then go to Ron.
I have not been to the Range Creek area, but I have many friends who have, and their description of the pretty stringent protection that the BLM and the state are trying to accord that area impresses me. I hope that the BLM continues to manage the Range Creek area as conservatively as possible, just because I think it's a really important area, obviously, for the archaeology. There was not much said about the Labyrinth wilderness area, but I was looking at the map, which I can't see right now, but it shows the motorized routes through there. I just have to repeat again, a wilderness area where you cannot get more than like a half a mile from a motorized route is a severely compromised wilderness area. So I would like for the BLM to revisit their travel management in that area with a view towards reducing the conflict with the people who are floating on the river below. And that's it.
Thank you, Tom. Ron, would you like to go ahead and talk? I think you're still on. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I represent the Recreational Aviation Foundation. And I'm going to make these comments to also cover Green River Wilderness and the San Rafael Wilderness, so I don't have to come back. But what I'd like to point out to you is that the Wilderness Act of 1964 has a sentence that I would like to have recorded and you folks to think about it while you're working on this plan. And it's from the Wilderness Act of 64, it's special provisions, section 4, subparagraph D. It says, within wilderness areas designated by this act, the use of aircraft and motorboats where those uses have already become established may be permitted and continue subject to such restrictions as the Secretary of Agriculture deems desirable. So there's 28 airstrips in those 3 wilderness areas that have been in use while these areas have been wilderness study areas. And I'm just pointing out to you that they can remain in use under the wilderness designation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. We appreciate your comments. Sarah, we'll move to you.
Thank you, Angela. This is Sarah Stock, Grand County Commission. It's interesting, Ron, that you just spoke about aviation. This was something maybe I should have brought up in the management of the Scenic Riverway, but I know that there is a lot of user conflict between especially small paraglider type machines because they are so noisy and linger in the canyon bottoms, but also airplanes that drop below the rim and quiet recreation users in the canyon. So I encourage the BLM to take a good look at that and hopefully implement something to limit takeoffs and landings, maybe at the mineral bottom landing strip, especially, like I said, of those paraglider things that sound like lawnmowers and often are seen up and down that river corridor. But I would also, this is me speaking personally, encourage the BLM to analyze those airstrips that were mentioned and really consider the impact that aviation has on the experience of wilderness and hopefully limit the number of those airstrips that are open. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I am certain that I will say this name wrong. Nikita, would you like to go ahead and talk?
You got it right. It's Nikita. I'm Nikita Hansen. I'm with the Division of Wildlife Resources out of the Price Field Office. And my comments in relation to aviation as well, just in that for wildlife management purposes, particularly for bighorn sheep, we often need the ability to use helicopters for management. So wanted that to be considered.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to Dana to talk about the San Rafael Swell Recreation Area.
Great, thank you. Again, my name is Dana and I'm an assistant field manager here in the Price Field office. I'm excited because I think I'm the last presentation, but in this presentation, we'll be talking about 3 related designations. So the first designation is the San Rafael Swell Recreation Area. The map on your left shows the San Rafael Swell Recreation Area outlined in blue. It's in the center of our San Rafael Swell with I-70 running through it. The Dingell Act designated approximately 217,000 acres as the recreation area to protect and enhance the recreational and educational resources of this region. Within the recreation area, most uses will continue as they had prior to designation. The Dingell Act specifically highlighted livestock grazing, but there will be a few changes. For example, motorized vehicles are limited to designated roads, and the construction of new temporary or permanent roads is also prohibited. Due to the good resources or fund resources within the recreation area, the visitation within the San Rafael Swell Recreation Area is expected to increase over the next several years. BLM may have to consider building facilities to accommodate this increase or to provide for a better visitor use experience. If you look at the map in the center of your screen, the San Rafael Swell Recreation Area is highlighted as a green polygon, and surrounding it is kind of a darker orange polygon. And those are our wilderness areas. So next slide, please. So the second designation that I'll be talking about are the 14 wilderness areas. As we mentioned previous, the wilderness areas do surround the San Rafael Swell Recreation Area. The Wilderness Act does direct BLM to preserve and enhance the wilderness character of these areas. There are many things that will stay the same. A lot of our current recreation will continue, and valid and existing rights will be honored. In addition, the Dingell Act highlighted that some commercial use could be authorized. But with wilderness management, there are a few things that will change. Permanent roads and motorized and mechanized travel will be prohibited, except for a few cases. So the wilderness area surrounds the San Rafael Swell. We'll go to the next slide to look at our third related designation. On this slide, we'll be talking about lands that have been released from wilderness study areas. Much of the area that is now designated as wilderness was formerly a wilderness study area. But during the designation through the Dingell Act, it was determined that some of the land had been adequately studied for wilderness, but it did not meet the characteristics of a wilderness area. So approximately 17,000 acres have been released from the wilderness study area. So BLM will be looking at how we should manage that. Should we add goals and objectives, and what are the allowable uses for this released land? Our acreage is not exact yet, as we are still working with the official surveys and developing the map. But again, it's about 17,000 acres of land that will be turned back to general BLM. Now I'd like to turn the time to Angela to work with public comment.
Thank you, Dana. Just as a reminder, we'd like to provide input for the San Rafael Swell Recreation Area. You may raise your hand virtually at the bottom of your screen, or by pushing *9 on your phone, *6 to unmute. We are going to go to William first. Go ahead, William.
I actually figured out how to unmute myself. I would like to see an increase in efforts to resolve these boundary and trespass issues in the wilderness areas. A specific example is Molly's Castle on the east side of the Big Wild Horse Mesa Wilderness. There is extensive dispersed camping intrusions that have grown in the last couple of years as recreation has grown. I see a lot of pressure for dispersed recreation, and I think the sooner that these boundary issues get resolved, the quicker these can be mitigated, because they're going to continue to grow and they will become more difficult to manage. Thank you.
Thank you, William. We will go to Tom Elder and then to Alvin.
The San Rafael River borders the recreation area to the north of the San Rafael River. Part of that area is in a river corridor that essentially I think should get the same standard of care as the designated wild and scenic rivers. The San Rafael was not designated, but it is a river that is valued by the river running people. It's small, it's got a shorter season, but on the other hand, last time I checked, you did not need to go through a permit system to get a permit, and it's a really easy river for families to float. So I would just like to see the north bank of the Santa Fe Swell between Fuller Bottom and Buckhorn Draw, where the bridge is, the view shed be protected there, and the qualities that people are looking for in a wilderness river trip be maintained.
Thank you, Tom. We'll go to Alvin and then to Josh. Alvin, I think you're still muted.
Okay, is that better?
Yes, thank you. We can hear you now.
Okay. Yes, my name's Alvin Brown, and I'm representing DW Tire, Dill Wilson Tire, and I'm a NEPA planner working with that corporation. And DW Tire has been working for about 10 years on a wireless communications plan along the I-70 corridor between Salina and Green River. And we're just about to build out that plan. We have one remaining site that's encumbered by some of the management direction in the San Rafael recreation area. And specifically, it's direction affecting RO right-of-ways and special use permitting and the San Rafael Reef ACEC. And so we're going to be interested in commenting to the effect that we would like to see some updated and changed management direction through the amendment for some amount or some limited right-of-way. Especially where it affects the I-70 corridor for health and safety concerns, which relates to the wireless communications. And we'll be following up with more extensive written comment and providing some documentation that or some NEPA reports and such that we've been working on over the years that we think would help inform the amendment.
Great, thank you, Alvin. Josh, and then Susan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Great, thanks, guys. Thanks, Angela. My name is Josh Kelson. I'm a private pilot and a member of the Utah Backcountry Pilots Association as well. And I just wanted to echo Ron's comments from the RAF. There are dozens of strips in not only this area, the Santa Fe Swell area, but others that have been mentioned, Green River and such. Airstrips that have existed since the 1950s or earlier than that. And they're great for not only recreational access, but they provide access for search and rescue efforts, support animal management, as was mentioned, firefighting efforts. And I just really would like to comment that these be, kept open and access to them is kept open.
Thank you for those comments. We'll go to Susan.
Hi, my name is Susan Zarkarisi, and I work for Utah State Parks and Recreation. And I would just like to really encourage the local price office to work with our region manager, Megan Blackwelder, and our local park manager, James Wells, with the recreation and the recreation planning you guys are going to be doing in the recreation inside San Rafael Swell. In that we are going to probably be co-managing that area. I don't think there's any other way you're going to control what all the increased visitation that we're going to see over the next 10, let's be honest, 20 years. And so that's my comment. And then I'd also like to comment that with the many wilderness areas that are being created, as we improve these recreation areas, we are going to need utility corridors through those. And so I just ask that the BLM consider some utility corridor planning, either under the existing roads where it's buried in the road right away, or limited overhead where it won't seriously obstruct viewshed, and just other general planning issues. But that's pretty much all I have.
Thank you, Susan. And then our last comment will be Mike.
Yes, Mike Hyde from the Utah Public Lands Policy Coordinating Office again. Just as I said previously with Uintah County, Emery County also has a county resource management plan. And we would just encourage the BLM, especially as you look how to manage those 17,000 acres that are released from wilderness study areas, that you coordinate closely with the county and attempt to be consistent with their county resource management plan to the greatest degree possible. We also agree with Susan's comment about the need to preserve utility corridors, especially for access to energy generation facilities that might occur, such as wind or solar in the region. Maybe also for access to critical mineral locations. So I appreciate Susan bringing that up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. We appreciate everyone's comments. We will move over to Amber to talk about public comments, next steps, and timing.
Hey again, everyone. Thank you, Angela. So public comments are due on December 3rd. Comments should provide sufficient detail for the agency to understand the commenter's position and why the issues raised are important to the decision. Following the scoping period, the BLM will consolidate the comments received into a scoping report. This report will summarize the issues, alternatives, and data provided in the comments. The scoping report, when completed, will be posted to the ePlanning website. The BLM and their cooperating agencies will use the information from the scoping comments to form alternatives for each plan amendment. Once alternatives are formed, the BLM will work with the cooperating agencies to analyze the impacts of those alternatives. A draft resource management plan, environmental assessment will then be released to the public for review and comment. Per policy, amendments that consider areas of critical environmental concern will be subject to a 60-day comment period. Those that do not consider ACECs will be subject to a 30-day comment period. The comments received will be analyzed. Substantive comments, those that identify flaws, new alternatives, or incorrect or new data, will be responded to, and a proposed resource management plan environmental assessment will be released, triggering a 30-day protest period and consequential 60-day governor's consistency review period. After those periods are complete, a final RMP decision record will be issued. Again, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Angela, back to you.
Thank you again, Amber. We want to thank again all of our panelists and to our participants. There was a great deal of information given. It is important that we receive your feedback and hear about the unique issues that affect you. We'd like to give you another opportunity to provide input. We will have about 20 minutes on the 6 plan amendments that were presented. Please raise your hand virtually. Thank you, William. Go ahead.
Hi, I'd just like to advocate one more time, echo a comment that Ron and Josh made, but on behalf of the aging population that would still like to be able to access and enjoy these areas, I would like to advocate that you consider keeping these airstrips open, because it is one of the only ways that I, as an elderly person, can actually access these remote areas now due to my health, I guess, and my declining health. I would very much like to visit these places, but there's no way I could float these rivers or hike the distances in order to be able to enjoy that. So on behalf of people my age, I would really like to encourage you to have other means of accessing these areas other than by foot or by water. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Alvin, we'll go to Alvin and then to Tom. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you for giving me a go back. I just wanted to add a couple of things to my previous comments. And I may be repeating some here, but something I think I may have left out is in addition to being interested in seeing updated management direction for some ROW uses and especially related to the I-70 corridor. Other possibilities would be mapping changes to the ACE boundaries between I-70 and the San Rafael Reef. Just some slight adjustments could make sites available for, or at least a site available for to move it out of the exclusion zone of the San Rafael Reef. So that would be another solution with updated management direction we would suggest. And then I just wanted to pass on that part of this also relates to a presidential memorandum from President Clinton that turned into the Telecommunications Act of 1996 that provides direction to federal agencies to cite these communication sites and towers. And I think the amendment's a good chance to update to come into better compliance with that act. And I can provide more information on that as needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Alvin. We appreciate that. Sorry to switch the screen too quick. Tom, go ahead.
Yes, there's one problem in particular that I'm sure the BLM staffers are aware of with the people that are in the river corridor. There has developed sort of a fad of some aviators actually touching and going on the river surface well below the canyon rims. So I would just encourage the BLM to see what they can do to resolve that, because that's massively disruptive to have a small plane coming in at river level, essentially. And you can go online on, you can Google it, you can even find people posting videos of this happening in the river canyon. So if there's some way to address that, I think that would be a great step forward.
Thank you, Tom. We'll go to Mark and then to William.
Hi, I really support the effort to have some areas protected from motor vehicles, from airplanes, from livestock, places that we can go to find truly natural conditions. That doesn't need to be everywhere, but we do need some places like that to find peace, solitude, and natural conditions. And that's what wilderness should be. I wasn't able to see most of this meeting. I wanted to ask, will tomorrow's meeting be the same or different?
Tomorrow's meeting will be the same. We will also provide a video of this presentation on the ePlanning website.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. William, and then to Ron.
Excuse me. Yes, I'm William McCarville. I represent the Wasatch Mountain Club. Failed to mention that earlier. I think the agency needs to consider developing a visitor use and recreation management plan. And this is a long-term planning efforts where you come up with indicators in terms of wildlife, plants and animals, soil erosion, quality of the experience, And then you follow these indicators over time so you can do trend analysis. We tend to kill what we love, and just simply adding more and more capacity as demand goes up can get us in a place where we're overusing and abusing what we really like. And I think science needs to be applied to follow what's going on with particularly recreation, dispersed recreation, and to manage its effects over time so that damaging effects can be minimized. I think the BLM is a member of a interagency group that has come up with this sort of idea of visitor management planning, and I would strongly recommend that we incorporate it now as opposed to waiting till later when it will have allowed a lot of problems to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Ron, if you would like to go ahead and talk.
Okay, I have 2 points. One has to do with these aircraft flying low down the river. The FAA has given all pilots, and it's printed on all of our sectional maps, that we're to stay 2,000 feet above the surface. You get down below one of those rims, you're not below 2,000 feet above the surface. My suggestion is get the tail numbers off of those airplanes, call the RAF.org and report to the RAF, and we will deal with it. The second thing I want to talk about is use in wilderness areas. I live 30 miles west of the Bob Marshall Wilderness, and that's a Forest Service managed wilderness, and they have what they call the National Visitor Use Monitoring Program. That program says that nationwide that wilderness use is a day activity with an average time of 5 hours. Think about that. How far can you walk from a trailhead to, let's just say, the wilderness boundary? Most of the public agencies have created a pretty good buffer area that they treat as wilderness around these wilderness areas, but say that the car can drive to the post that says no motor vehicles beyond this point, San Rafael Wilderness Area. Okay, how far are you going to walk in 5 hours, right? About 2 miles. The interior of these wildernesses are not being used. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. We have a couple of questions that we would like to answer live. So the first one, Amber, if you wouldn't mind taking this question, what is a substantive comment for those who will want to do a written comment?
No problem. Thanks, Angela. To be most helpful, comments should be as specific as possible. A substantive comment provides new information about the proposed action, an alternative, or the analysis. It identifies a different way to meet the need or points out a specific flaw in the analysis. Maybe it suggests alternative methodologies or reasons why they should be used. And it makes factual corrections or identifies a different source of credible research, which, if used in the analysis, could result in different effects. Comments that are most helpful are specific. What do you like? What don't like? What don't you like? What improvements you think can be made? And suggest those changes and be specific. For efficiency, the BLM will treat identical and similar comments as a similar comment. Is there anything else, Angela? So the key takeaway message is be specific.
Thank you. That was a fantastic answer.
No problem.
Dana, if you wouldn't mind taking this question, could you explain the difference between the wild, scenic, and recreational designations under the Wild and Scenic Rivers Act?
Sure. Like you said, under the Wild and Scenic River Act, there are 3 different designations. There are wild segments, recreational segments, and scenic segments. And through this Dingell Act, we have one of each. The wild segments are relatively primitive. You know, they're free of impoundments. Access is usually limited to walking in. There's not any roads nearby. So a good example of that is Desolation Canyon. The recreational segments, or I'll go in order. So the scenic segments, the shorelines are still primitive, but they don't have any evidence of impoundments or modifications to the flow. In some cases, there's access by roads in those scenic areas, but in general, the scenery is still quite intact. And so Labyrinth Canyon is a good example there. And then the most developed segment are recreational segments, and that's where there can be evidence of changes in flow and roads, and the shorelines can be developed. And we have a recreational section there near the town of Green River. So the Wild and Scenic River Act, though, helps us manage all three. I like to think of the wilderness area as primitive, the scenic area for scenery and enjoyment, and then the recreational section we manage for recreation.
Thank you, Dana. Again, if any of these questions bring up some comments from our attendees, please feel free to raise your hand. We have a couple of more questions we'd like to answer. So Lance, if you could field this question, is the BLM working with cooperators? If so, who?
Absolutely, Angela. Appreciate that question. You know, the BLM has been working and will continue to work with cooperating agencies. There were several cooperating agencies that we invited to participate in our planning and land use planning process. Out of, you know, about 94 individual cooperators that we've invited so far. To date, we've had several cooperators accept that invitation to be a cooperating agency. So those that have accepted it, we have the Bureau of Indian Affairs. The National Park Service has accepted that through several different National Park Service offices, including Canyonlands, Glen Canyon, and Dinosaur, as well as the Natural Landmark Office with the Park Service. Under the state of Utah, we have the Public Lands Policy and Coordinating Office, which accepted to be an cooperating agency, as well as the School and Institutional Trust Lands Division of Forestry, Fire and State Sovereign Lands, as well as state parks, have all accepted to be a cooperating agency. We've got counties signed on as well, Daggett and Uintah County, and we have the cities of Green River, Huntington, and Naples that are currently cooperating agencies. And if we have any other federal agencies out there that have not yet sent in your desire to accept that cooperating agency status, it's not too late. We would welcome that and look forward to working with our cooperating agencies. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you, Lance. Chris, if you don't mind fielding this question, most of the resource management plan amendments areas also have ongoing OHV travel management planning. Shouldn't the RMP amendment be completed first?
Okay, good question. Both of these processes can happen parallel. They're different processes. And if the TMPs are finished first and the RMPs are finished second and they differ, then the TMPs would be modified. If the order is reversed, then we would adjust the TMP alternatives to coincide with the RMP as been changed. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you, Chris. Renee, if you'll answer this one, will the BLM designate any new special recreation management areas or SRMAs to manage recreation within the McCoy Flats or the John Wesley Powell area?
Yeah, no problem on that question. It depends. I think it's something that has been considered, especially for the McCoy Flats portion of the Dingell Act. A lot of that is going to come down to what's best for the resource. What do we need to do to develop a good management plan for the area? And to simply put it, step one is getting some of these comments and information from the public. So we're doing just that. But we are definitely going back to the question, it is something that is being considered, Angela.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer, Renee. Roger, would you mind taking this one? Will BLM make changes to livestock grazing as part of these planning efforts?
Sure, Angela. Modifications to grazing permits occur at the implementation level in accordance with BLM policy, handbooks, and manuals. These R&B amendments will not address implementation level decisions. Existing permits conform to the resource management plan, applicable laws, regulations, and policy in effect at the time the permit is issued. Grazing permittees will continue to follow stipulations outlined by their permit through and after the amendment process until their permit expires or is renewed. However, permits issued after the resource management plan amendments are completed will conform with the RMP amendment decisions. Please note that for the Jurassic National Monument, the 17 wilderness areas, and the John Wesley Powell Conservation Area, the Dingell Act specified that livestock grazing may continue if established before the date of enactment of this, the date of enactment of this act, and in accordance with one, applicable law, including regulations. Two, the guidelines set forth in Appendix A of the report of the Committee on Interior and Insular Affairs of the House of Representatives, accompanying House Representative 2570 of the 101st Congress, commonly called House Report 101-405, and 3, the purpose of the designation.
Thank you, Roger. Dana, if we could go back to you, how will existing special recreation management areas be addressed in these planning efforts?
Thank you for that question. I had to think about that for a second. But within the Price and Moab resource management plans, we currently have several special recreation management areas, and some of them do overlap with the designations within the Dingell Act, like the San Rafael Swell Recreation Area and Desolation, Turtle, and Labyrinth wilderness areas. So what we're going to do is BLM will review the need and the stated objectives for the existing special recreation management areas to, evaluate, are they consistent with the Dingell Act designations? Are there redundancy? Is there a need to keep both designations? So we'll take a close look at them and see how they fit.
Just to follow up, we have a question on that. Will existing outfitters and guides be impacted by the land use planning efforts?
Yeah, great question, because we do have several special recreation permit holders, including, outfitters and guides. And so, right now, special recreation permits, those terms and conditions occur at the implementation level planning. We look at our BLM policy and our handbooks and our manuals. So the RMP amendments aren't going to really address those individual implementation level decisions down to what is a stipulation on their permit. So currently, all of our operators, they conform to the needs of our resource management plan. And they're going to continue to follow their stipulations. And as we make changes and updates, they will continue to need to follow. So It'll be an ongoing process, but again, our planning efforts are a little bit higher level than our implementation level plans for each individual operator.
Thank you, Dana. Lance, if you don't mind answering this question, why are we addressing all 6 plan amendments in this meeting? Why doesn't each plan amendment get its own meeting?
Absolutely. You know, Angela, we're trying to be as efficient as possible. Each of these plan amendments are laid out in the Dingell Act. And so with the establishment of the Dingell Act, we're also trying to be efficient as well, so that we're not only saving the public's time of having one meeting instead of 6 different meetings, which we believe that some of the comments and things could be overlapping. So we're in hopes that this is a time savings for the public. We recognize your time is valuable. We really appreciate you attending today. I'm really pleased with where the meeting has gone. We've had some great comments. We appreciate everybody's input and your participation today. So, you know, these plan amendments are necessary to comply with the act, and addressing the plan amendments during one scoping meeting, we hope maximizes the flexibility of the public and helps provide that feedback that's important to us as an agency. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Stephanie, if you don't mind answering this question for all of the attendees, does the Green River area include Mineral Canyon?
Hi, Angela. Part of the process of establishing a wild scenic river is that we are required to document what the final boundary is going to be. And we are currently proposing to extend that boundary up into Mineral Canyon to protect the outstanding remarkable values of the river that are present in that canyon. There are allowances for us changing the boundary around like that. There are limitations on the number of acres per mile. And by extending it up, we would be within those limitations. So that is a proposal that we are currently considering.
Thank you, Stephanie. So Molly, if you can answer the question about how is the BLM addressing the land conveyances and Sittler land exchanges?
Hi, Angela. I think that would be better answered by Lance Porter or Chris Conrad.
Chris, if you don't mind taking that one, that would be great.
No problem. So the Sittler land exchanges, although authorized through the Dingell Act itself, is a separate process. And if and when we get the Sittler lands exchanged to the BLM, the lands will be managed according to the land that they're next to. So if they're already surrounded by a wilderness area, they then become wilderness. If there were something that was, say, on the border for some reason, it would either be will or it would pick up the designations around it. So that's on a case-by-case basis, but generally speaking, it's going to be the lands that are contiguous with the section that we get from Sittler.
Thank you, Chris. Dana, I think this question might be best addressed by you. Will there be new trails or trailheads identified as part of the planning efforts for the San Rafael Swell recreation area?
Oh, great question. A recreation area and trails and trailheads, I think that goes together. So yeah, currently BLM has worked on preparing some trail studies for the San Rafael Swell recreation area and the wilderness areas. And the development of new trails and like new trailheads and kind of information kiosks That's going to be at the implementation level decision. Right now at this like resource management plan level, we're kind of looking at what activities would be allowable within the recreation area or not. And so as part of this plan amendment process, we won't be identifying new trailheads. We'll be identifying the activities that could occur. But then when we're ready to start implementing and maybe creating a new trail or better signing the trails that we have and creating parking lots, we'll do individual site-specific NEPA and inform the public through that process.
Great, thank you. And then if we can just go back to Roger, since this is your area, will the BLM allow mineral development or oil and gas activity in the specially designated areas?
The existing mineral leases do still have valid existing rights, Angela. So yes, they will be allowed to continue, but the act will allow no new leases, mining claims, etc. So mineral development in there.
Perfect, thank you. So this might be a question for Lance. How did the BLM and SITLA decide which BLM lands will be transferred to SITLA?
Thanks, Angela. You know, SITLA early on took a look at the parcels that they were interested in, and they created maps and worked back and forth. And the agency then looks at those maps and we work together on it. Kind of a coordinated effort between both offices.
Perfect, thank you. Stephanie, I'm wondering if you can take this question. How seriously does the BLM take public comment?
Yes, I can take that question. We take comment very seriously. Every comment that is submitted is read, and there are processes for how to handle those comments, and we follow those processes that are set out in our manuals and handbooks. And there will be additional opportunities for comment. As Amber explained earlier, they would be when we release the draft plans to the public, and then there are other subsequent opportunities as well.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Stephanie, to make you come back on. Can anyone see those public comments? Is there?
Yes, we will be releasing after the end of this process a scoping report, which will summarize the comments that we received for the 6 plan amendments, and that will be posted to the internet, the ePlanning websites. Once we reach the public comment stage on the draft reports, the substantive comments will receive actual responses inside the document itself. And that also will be posted to the ePlanning website.
Thank you for that clarification. So Amber, if you could take this question again, consider the areas of critical environmental concern. Will the BLM be considering those?
Hi, Angela. Yeah, I'm happy to address that question. Yes, wherever there is an instance where an area of critical environmental concern overlaps with one of the Dingell Act designations, the BLM is required to take a look at that ACEC.
Fantastic. Thank you, Amber.
Yeah, you bet.
So, Chris, if you don't mind answering this last question for me, will the San Rafael Swell Recreation Advisory Council be able to provide input into the plan amendment process?
The short answer is yes. Right now, however, they're going to miss the comment period. It will close before their next meeting. The process of getting those meetings is complicated. It has to be posted in the Federal Register. The agenda has to be made, and I don't think the process is complete yet. And although they're hoping to have the next meeting in January or February, as far as the council goes, they're going to miss this comment period. However, they've been alerted to this fact, and each of the council members have been contacted and told them what they need to do to comment collectively and individually. At any meeting, in the future, we're always willing to take their opinion on things. So their recommendations won't go unnoticed.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
If you don't mind just answering this follow-up question from a previous question, the Dingell Act requires preparation of trail plans for San Rafael Swell and the wilderness areas. Are those part of this planning process?
Well, that's a good question too, and Dana might be a better person to ask. I do know that we have trail plans that are out there and posted, and so I'm going to say in general fashion they probably are, but Dana, you might have to add to that.
I think you answered that quite well. Right now, we're talking about the resource plan amendment process due to the Dingell Act designations. And well, the Dingell Act also asked us to do those trail plans. So that is what BLM has done, and they are available for the public to review. They will be considered as part of this, as part process. But again, the plan amendment is going to focus on kind of your management goals and objectives for those areas.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for all of the attendees asking those really great questions. We're just going to go ahead and open it up for the last few minutes of our meeting for public comment. You guys have been very helpful in this whole process. Okay, Ron, go ahead.
Okay, I have 2 points here. First one is the RMPs of the Vernal and the Moab do not address aviation in the RMP. The Price RMP does. So the amendments could help the Vernal and the Moab correct that little shortfall. The second thing I have is a question. How do you deal with form letters? By form letters, I mean an organization that writes a letter, sends it out to its membership, and each member signs their name at the bottom and sends it in. It's essentially the same letter, just 10,000 signatures. How do you handle that?
Amber, if you don't mind taking that one, I think that you had talked about a little bit about this when you're talking about specific comments.
I sure was, Angela, and it's a really excellent question. So as we had spoke, or I had explained earlier, that public comments that are similar or repeated will be treated as a single comment. Again, we're really going for specificity and things that are going to help us with the planning process. And I hope that helps a little bit. Good question.
I think it's a very good question, and we have seen that. Thank you so much. If any of the attendees have any other comments, we would love to hear them now. Great. Yes, Michael, go ahead.
Yes, I just had a comment, not only for the areas up around Uena County, but all in general. I know that the majority of the comments that dealt with non-motorized versus motorized recreation. We're leaning towards non-motorized. And I would just like to comment that throughout this process, we need to remember that everybody recreates in different ways, and everybody's, the way I recreate's the most important to me, and the way somebody else recreates is the most important to them. But one isn't necessarily right versus the other, even though they may conflict. And I would just like the people that are doing these plans and evaluating what uses will be in these areas, I'd really like that they focus on traditional uses. If there's traditionally a motorized use in that area, I feel like, and I know a lot of people do feel like, that should remain in that area. If there isn't a motorized use in that area, then no, it probably shouldn't go in there. But I do feel like, I know in the areas it talks about maintaining the traditional use of our areas in these areas that we're discussing. And I think that should hold true, instead of using these areas, this is a way to remove motorized or any particular form of recreation or use. These should be a way to secure traditional uses. And I understand that sometimes those uses are going to conflict, but I think we need to realize that everybody's recreation is important to them. And I understand that sometimes these conflict, but if they've been using this traditionally, they have as much right to the other people that have been using it traditionally. And I just wanted that said.
Thank you, Michael. We appreciate your insight. I'm going to hand it back to Lance Porter.
Thanks, Angela. Appreciate it. It's always fun doing these meeting with members of the public. The Zoom platform was a little bit different for us, of course. I remember, prior to COVID, being able to meet in the same room together with everybody and look at maps and point on paper together. And while that method is preferred by many of us, I think we've received some valuable feedback tonight. And I just really want to thank you for coming and participating. One of the key important things that we do at scoping is identify the issues. And so many of you have provided those issues to us tonight. And if you think of other ones, don't hesitate to, submit your comments, get your comments submitted by December 3rd. There's plenty of time. I don't want you to think that tonight's the only night that you have access to BLM employees or staff. If anybody has questions on a specific plan amendment topic, I would invite you to call our specific office, be it Vernal or Price, or even down to Moab if it's over the plan amendment for Moab for the wild and scenic rivers. I am also available. Feel free to reach out to me, and I can also help you and address those concerns that you might have and be able to help you get your comments submitted. It's important for the agency to receive your comments by the due date. That helps define those issues and gets us moving on the right path for the plan amendments. So it's been a great evening meeting with you. I know that we all have choices in how we spend our time, and I'm just really appreciative that you chose to join us this afternoon. We value your input on these important areas. Don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have further questions. Thank you again for your time, and have a great night. We will repeat this exact same meeting again tomorrow evening, and you're welcome to join or go ahead and submit a comment online. Thank you very much. Angela?
Thank you, Lance. And thank you again to all of our attendees and panelists. We will keep the meeting open until 5. So if you have any other comments or are just willing to hang out with your local BLM office, we'd love to have you. Thank you. Josh, I see that you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to say thanks to all the presenters in that and for your time as well, putting this all together and presenting it. I did have a question on the submitting comments by December 3rd. I must have missed where exactly we do that for each of these. I see in the chat there's a bunch of URLs, but when I visit them, it doesn't, I'm not seeing a place for comments to be submitted. And then the other question would be, are written comments preferred over comments in the Zoom meeting or a format like this?
Amber, can we send this back to you?
You betcha. I actually was getting ready to turn on early. So Josh, on the left-hand side of the ePlanning project site that you're on, there should be a little button that says participate now. When you click that button, a document will pop up, and I've ran into this with others' computers. You have to kind of like move your computer monitor over to see it, but there's another green button in the right-hand corner that says participate now. And when you click that, it will ask you for your contact information and start you with a comment period.
Got it. Perfect. Yeah, the URL kind of landed on the homepage, but the green bar was highlighted for participate now. So
no,
I did click on that.
Yep, no worries. Thank you for submitting.
Yeah, thanks, Amber.
And yep. Amber, will you just hit the second part of his question as well? Do we prefer comments in a public arena like our Zoom meeting or on ePlanning?
I think we are happy to take comments either way. If you're comfortable providing feedback to us in a public setting, that's great. For some people, they need to step back and maybe think about their comment and articulate it. So I say whatever is best for you, we're happy to integrate it.
Great, thank you. They're not seen as like a duplicate entry or anything like that, or duplicate.
Well, yeah, we'll find those out as we go along. Okay. As long as it's not 10,000.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you again for everyone's questions and comments. Does anyone have any further questions or concerns that they would like to share? Would any of the panelists like to add additional information?
You know, Angela, I would just like to reiterate to utilize the ePlanning forum for submitting comments. It's the fastest way for the BLM to obtain comments and process them. So just again, thanks everyone, and be sure to check out our ePlanning website. There's a lot of good information there, and the process is pretty slick when submitting comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Amber. Roger, I saw that you had thought about commenting.
I was just going to clarify, I'm not sure who all is on, but on the boundary for McCoy Flats, the original EA covered the 4 township ranges there in the EA, but there was really no boundary for the bike trail. It just said in those 4 township ranges. So when I drew the planning area, I kept it within the 4 township ranges. But personally, I like to use things like roads, etc., for the planning area. It's easier to define. And we realize that the BLM, that private property and sitla, etc., even though it's in the planning area, we will not address it. It's not part of the plan amendment. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Roger. That was a big concern at the beginning of the meeting.
We appreciate you being with us this evening and joining us for our public meeting. I see we just have a small handful of attendees that are still with us. in the last couple minutes of the meeting before we end it. Is there anybody else that would like to make a comment on the plan amendments? If so, go ahead and use the raise your hand feature. I'll give you just a moment to contemplate. And then if not, I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting and thank you for coming. I don't see anybody's hand going up immediately, but if they do, just, I want to reiterate, I think the BLM employees are very knowledgeable. We've had a wonderful meeting this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. The amount of information that we've provided to you has been great, and your feedback has been very helpful for our agency. So thank you so much for being with us. And we're going to go ahead and close out the meeting at this time. Thank you very much. Have a great night.